So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we continue with a series of going through some big mock questions taken from some GCSE Maths higher exam papers. Now as always there'll be a copy of the questions that we go through in the link in the description for you to download and have an attempt at, which I strongly recommend that you do, just so you can see how much your prior knowledge can handle these particular big mark questions. And I'll also include a link which goes to the contents page of the channel, so you've got easy access to all the videos going over all the topics of GCSE and Key Stage 3 Maths, as well as easy access to other big mark question videos. So in this particular set of questions we're going to be focused on the following 6 topics. So there's going to be a question on direct and indirect proportion, circle theorems, rearranging the formulae, algebraic fractions, volume and compound interest. Now there are a mixture of marks and a mixture of different types of questions, both calculator and non-calculator, but I would always say when revising, regardless of whether it's on a calculator paper or a non-calculator paper, try and do the question without using a calculator, and that will generally improve your skill of revising for maths if you can do it without, because obviously then not all questions on the calculator paper involve using a calculator, and also then it just improves your general accuracy of your answers, particularly when it comes to volume questions where you may find it easier to work in terms of pi, which typically you wouldn't do if you're using a calculator, but now that the Casio calculators give you your answer in terms of pi, so again that's one problem solved for you. So let's get straight into question 1. So question 1 reads, h is inversely proportional to the cube root of L. H equals 7 when L equals 64. And the question is asking us to work out the equation connecting h and L. So the first thing we need to do here with this inverse proportion question is to convert this statement using mathematic notation. So here we've got that h is inversely proportional to the cube root of L. So it looks something like this. Then obviously following the steps we then need to replace the proportional symbol with equals k. So we've got h equals k over the cube root of L. And then to find out what k is, we then just need to substitute these numbers into this formula and solve for k. So if I do just that, what I end up with is 7 equals k over the cube root of 64. The cube root of 64 is 4. Which then gives me an answer of 7 equals k over 4. So k is going to equal 4 times 7, which is 28. So then the final formula is going to be h equals 28 over the cube root of L. Now always make sure that your cube root does look like a cube root. You don't want it to look like 3 root L. So this here is my final equation. Then moving on to B, it then says find the value of h when L equals 2744. So all I need to do here is substitute this number into the equation that I've generated, well actually the formula that I've generated. So here it's going to be h equals 28 over the cube root of 2744, and if I type that straight into my calculator I get an answer of 2. Moving on to question 2, it says that A, B, C are points on a circle with centre O. BD is a tangent to the circle. OCD is a straight line, and the question is asking us to work out the size of angle X. Now in this particular question, looking at the circle theorems and knowing the circle theorems, the fact that it's mentioned the tangent therefore means I'm going to be using the radius and the tangent meet at a 90-degree angle. So this angle here of OBD is going to be 90 degrees. And again, you don't need to write the reason, but I'm just going to do it anyway. So tangent meets the radius at 90 degrees. So that's why that's 90. I can then also see an arrowhead. So here is my arrowhead. And the circle theorem related to the arrowhead is that this angle at the center is twice the size of the angle at the circumference. So this angle here is going to be 64, and again that's from the arrowhead. And again, if the question did ask you to prove or state your reasons as to why certain angles are certain angles, then you would need to go through this, but this question is just asking for x, so I can do my working out on the diagram. And then what I know is that angles in a triangle add up to 180, so x equals 180 minus 90 minus 64, so x is going to give me an answer of 26 degrees. So moving on to question 3, it says rearrange 9m plus 4 lots of 2m minus 1 equals p squared plus bm to make m the subject. Now for this, what we need to do first is we need to expand the brackets. So we need to get rid of any brackets when we're doing these types of questions. So here we've got 9m plus 8m minus 4 equals p squared plus pm. Now what I want to try and do is get, well, if I can simplify this, so let's just simplify this first. So here I've got 17m minus 4 equals p squared plus pm. Then what we want to do here is then get all the m's on one side and everything else on the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to that side, and I'm going to take this minus 4 over to this side. So what that ends up becoming is 17m minus pm equals p squared plus 4. Now as you can see, I can't simplify the 17m minus pm, so what I now need to do is factorize with regards to m. So I've got 17 minus p equals p squared plus 4. Now again, try not to overcomplicate things. Although the right hand side looks like a difference of 2 squares, it isn't the difference because we're adding. So again, can't really factorize this, so I'm not even going to bother. So here then, all I then need to do is take this bracket over to the side, so I end up with m equals p squared plus 4 all over 17 minus p. And if you want to make sure, you can put the 17 minus p in brackets, but again, as long as it's all the denominator, then it's all good. Moving on to question 4, it says simplify fully 2 over x plus 1 plus 7 minus 5x over 3 plus 4x and give your answer as a single fraction. So for this, what we need to do is think about a common denominator, and the reason why, because we are adding fractions. So here our common denominator, and the most easy and efficient way of getting the common denominator is basically multiplying all the denominators together. So here my common denominator is going to be 3x plus 1. And again, if I convert this 4x into a fraction, it then becomes 4x over 1. So multiplying x plus 1 times 3 times 1 gives me 3 lots of x plus 1. Now again, if you want to rewrite that as 3x plus 3, that's entirely up to you, but I'm going to leave this as a factorized version. But again, if you want to expand it, that's fine. The only reason why I wouldn't expand it is because in case that if I do end up with a quadratic, which I'm generally will probably expecting, the brackets may cancel out. So that's the reason why I'm not going to expand the brackets in my denominator. So if this is going to be my common denominator, just without putting a line through my question, so this is my common denominator. So looking at this first fraction, I'm going to need to multiply that by 3. So here I'm going to end up with 3 times 2 over 3 lots of x plus 1. For the second fraction, let's change colour on that. I'm going to get, so here, don't know where that's gone, so this fraction here, remember it was a plus. So here I'm going to multiply this second fraction by x plus 1, so that's going to be 7 minus 5x multiplied by x plus 1, and the denominator is going to be 3 lots of x plus 1. Then for the third fraction, to get a denominator of 3x plus 1, I need to multiply both top and bottom by 3 lots of x plus 1, so that's going to be plus 4x multiplied by 3x plus 1 over 3 lots of x plus 1. Now that looks like a mess. I do need to be careful that that is not an x, it is a multiply. It's just my handwriting that I tend to switch between curly x's and normal x's, but I know what I'm doing, and so I need to make sure that it's going to be fine. So here, just as simplifying, I get 6 over 3x plus 1 plus, and then 7 minus 5x x plus 1 over 3x plus 1 plus, and then 4x times 3 is 12x, so that's going to be 12x x plus 1 over 3 lots of x plus 1. So all that's left for me to then do is combine this into a single fraction and simplify. So here I'm going to end up with 6 plus, now if I expand this out and I do it correctly, so so here I'm going to end up with 7x plus 7 minus 5x squared minus 5x, and then I'm going to add 12x squared plus 12x, and that's all going to be over 3 lots of x plus 1. So all that's left for me to now do is to simplify all of this. So collect the like terms on the numerator. So here I'm going to end up with minus 5x plus 12x, which is 7x squared. I'm going to end up with 6 plus, oh no, let's do the x's. Don't know why I'm doing that one for. So here I'm going to end up with plus 7x minus 5x plus 12x, which gives me an answer of 14x. And then finally 6 plus 7, which is 13. And that's all over 3x plus 1. Now, does that factorise the top? I don't think it does, so I'm going to leave that as my final answer. Then moving on to question 5, it says that Alec makes a bowl for dog food from a solid wooden cone. The sketch shows how the bowl is made. The cone has a radius of 9 centimeters and a perpendicular height of 30 centimeters. A smaller cone with a radius of 6 centimeters is removed, and then a hemisphere with a radius of 6 centimeters is removed, and the question is asking us to work out the volume of the remaining wood that forms the bowl. So what we need to do is we need to work out the volume of this bowl here, which is basically a hemisphere taken from a frustrum. So in terms of this particular question, in terms of work, what we need to do first is we need to find the height of the smaller cone. So in other words, what we need to do is we need to find the height of this. So to work out the volume of this here, that's going to be the volume of the big cone minus the volume of the small cone. Now in terms of working out the volume of the cone, I need to know the radius, I need to know the height. Now for the big cone, which is this here, I know those two bits of information. I know that the radius is 9, I know the height is 30, whereas for the smaller cone, so let me just write small here, and this is the big cone, I don't know what the height is. Now, because losing the triangles, we know that those two triangles, which I'm just going to highlight this one in orange, so the two triangles you can see on the screen are similar. So what I need to do is find the scale factor. Now to find the scale factor, I need the two bits of information that I know. So I know the two radiuses. So it's going to be 9 over 6, which is 3 over 2, which is 1.5. So the blue triangle is 1.5 times bigger than the orange triangle. So from this, I can then work out what h is. So h of the small cone. And because I'm going from big to small, what I need to then do is do the height of the big cone and divide it by the scale factor, which is 1.5. And that gives me an answer of 20 centimeters. So this then becomes 20 centimeters. Then from this, what I can then do, step 2, is then find the volume of the frustrum. So to do this, what I then need to do is basically use this formula here. So it's the volume of the big cone. So the big cone volume is going to be 1/3 multiplied by pi multiplied by 9 squared multiplied by 30, and that's going to be subtracted from the small cone volume, which is going to be 1/3 times pi times 6 squared times 20. Now again, if I type that all into my calculator, it gives me an answer of 570 pi. Now it might give you a decimal answer, but I'm just going to leave it as 570 pi just because I've still got some work to do, and it's a lot easier and more accurate to write 570 pi than it is to use a decimal. So the next thing for me then to do is now work out the volume of the bowl. So here, step 3 is the volume of the bowl is equal to the volume of the frustum minus the volume of the hemisphere. So in terms of the volume of the frustum, so this is equal to this. So the next thing for me then to do is to work out the volume of the hemisphere. So here the volume of the hemisphere And it tells me what the formula is, which they will tell you in the exam. So it's going to be 2/3 times pi times the radius cubed, so it's 6 cubed. And so let me just put a little bubble around that. So then to find the volume of the bowl, it's going to be 570 pi minus 2/3 times pi times 6 cubed. And again, if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 426 pi, and that's going to be in centimetre cubed. Or if I wanted to write that as a decimal, and just type that into my calculator, (426 pi), which as a decimal is 1338.31847 centimetre cubed. And again, if you want to round that answer up, that's entirely up to you. Personally, I would probably leave it as pi, because the question doesn't actually specifically say for me to round the answer up, so you can write any version that you want. Then moving on to our last question, it says that on the same date, Kate buys a car for £14,000 and a painting for £5,000. The value of the car decreases by 35% in the first year and then 10% each year. The value of the painting increases by 4% each year. Show that the painting becomes worth more than the car during the 5th year. So for this, what we need to do first is work each item for the 5 years. So for the car, the first year value, so after the first year, is going to be decreasing by 35%. So using decimal multipliers, it's going to be 14,000, and then we start with 100%, take away 35%, 65%. That as a decimal is 0.65, giving us a first year value of 9,100. Then for the next 4 years, the value of the car decreases by 10% each year. So it's going to be the value of the car after the first year, which is 9,100, multiplied by 10% decrease. Well, 100% take away 10% is 90%. That as a decimal is 0.9, and I want that over 4 years. So if I type that into my calculator, it gives me an answer of 5,970 and 31 pence. So that's the value of the car after or during the 5th year. Then what's next for me then to do is then work out the painting. So here we've got 5,000, that increases at a rate of 4%. So here, using compound interest, we've got 5,000 multiplied by 4% increase. So again, starting with 100%, adding 4% is 104%. That as a decimal is 1.04, and that's going to be over 5 years. So typing that all into my calculator, I get an answer of £6,083.26. So all that's left for me to then do is show that this number here is more than this value here of the car. So all I need to do then is just say that 6,083.26 is greater than 5,970.31. And there we go. Now, if you did work out the percentages and the values of the car and the painting separately, so you took it from each year and you did like some form of table, your percentages might be slightly different. Now, with me using decimal multipliers, my answer is probably a little bit more accurate, but the Markscheme does allow you to work it out separately. So if you find that the value of your car and the painting is slightly different to what I've got on the screen, you still may be correct. So it's worth definitely checking the Markscheme, because they will show all the possible answers that will give you the 5 marks.